Today, we stand at crossroads where our nation's identity, our very core, comes under threat, not only from external enemies or foreign powers, but also from forces within our own society. Forces that seek to tear us apart by playing on our wounds, emotions, and manipulating our collective memory. The biggest threat we face today is not radicalism or open sectarian violence. Those are tangible challenges we can fight head on. The real danger to India's secular fabric is much subtler. It's the consistent pattern of selective outrage, the weaponization of victimhood, and the convenient activism that has crept into our political discourse. And let me tell you this is doing more to ruin our secular ethos than any law or policy could ever do. Take a moment and reflect. How many times have we heard certain leaders speak out against religious polarization, demanding justice for one community while turning a blind eye to the suffering of others? This isn't just a minor oversight. It's a deliberate strategy to divide, to create fear, and to manipulate people's emotion for electoral gain. Look at the words of leaders like Mehbooba Mufti, who just recently warned, in the context of the Bangladesh riots, about the potential for a repetition of the 1947 riots, pointing out how the minority polarization in India is destroying India's secular fabric. Also stressing on how religious divisions are being used for political benefit. She seemingly called out for unity and for a fight against forces that seek to divide. But should we not ask her as well as ourselves that where was this fight when Kashmiri Hindus were being persecuted systematically in the 1990s? Why is it that the very perpetrators of this massive Hindu genocide are now preaching us the lessons of secularism? Did they raise a similar pattern of hue and cry when atrocities were happening in their own states just 3 decades back? What about the constant tussle that still goes on even today between the militants and the army in the state of Kashmir? They have not got up from their slumbers. Why? Because the victims of the Kashmir Valley's most brutal communal violence, the Kashmiri Hindus, to this date are ignored, marginalized, forgotten, and silenced. Why do we hear selective outrage only when it fits the political narrative? Why is it that suffering of one community is amplified while the pain of the other, especially the Hindus, is downplayed or outrightly erased? Selective outrage, my friends, does not serve justice. It undermines it. It only sows division, discord, because it says this pain matters, but that pain does not. And when communities see this injustice, when they witness this blatant cherry-picking of victims, it only breeds mistrust, and ultimately it breeds hate amongst those communities. And then comes the weaponization of victimhood. This is where the narrative becomes most dangerous. Certain leaders portray a community as perpetually oppressed, as if their suffering is unique, ongoing, and insurmountable, while erasing or downplaying the historical injustices faced by the others. How many times have we heard that the Muslim community in India is under constant threat? We have heard it a lot of times. While at the same time, we ignored the historical persecution of Hindus, the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus, the attacks on Hindu temples, marginalization of those who have been systematically oppressed by radical forces. When victimhood is used as a political tool, it prevents us from having honest conversations about reconciliation, about accountability, and about justice for all. It's used to silence any narrative that doesn't fit a particular agenda. But when we erase the truth, we weaken the fabric of our society. When we use victimhood as a weapon, we create a cycle of endless grievance and division. Not healing, not progress, but deepening animosity. And this hypocrisy is so obvious. Convenient activism is the tool of those who invoke secularism when it fits or suits their own purpose, calling for religious unity, calling for protection of minorities, but completely ignoring the secular fabric when it requires confronting uncomfortable truths. For example, while it is that we call for secularism when we are speaking about the protection of mosques, but do we acknowledge the severe destruction of temples? Why is it that secularism is invoked only when discussing one community's right, but conveniently forgotten when it comes to addressing the atrocities committed against the others? You cannot claim to be secular when your activism is selective, when your outrage is tactical, and when your concern is purely political. This is not how we build a unified, harmonious society. The real threat to secularism is not some grand conspiracy. It's not a single law or policy. The real threat comes from the consistent exploitation of communal wounds for political agenda or gain. When politicians, the likes of Mufti or OAC, choose to amplify grievances for electoral power, they risk tearing the very fabric of our nation. A fabric that has been built over centuries through the sacrifices of great leaders of Bharat and countless others who have laid down their lives for one unified Bharat or India, where every community could live in peace side by side. A secular India demands fairness, it demands honesty, and it demands truth. It's time for us to call out this pattern of selective outrage, to question the weaponization of victimhood, and to reject the convenience of activism that divides us rather than unite us. We need a shift in how we approach these narratives. It's time for constructive dialogue, not destructive division. It's time for reconciliation where the suffering of every community is acknowledged and addressed with equal urgency. It's time for justice for all victims of communal violence, including the Hindus, to rebuild trust in India's secular framework. So I leave this thought with you. True secularism isn't about picking side, but it is about acknowledging every injustice, standing up for every victim there, and most importantly, about creating a society where we all can live together in peace with equality and dignity. Thank you.